I'm Sarah Chin, 29 years old, and despite being the first in my family to graduate medical school, I've never been seen as anything more than a disappointment by my grandmother. The traditional Chinese New Year celebration was approaching, and I dreaded it more than the 36-hour shifts I pulled in the emergency room. This year, I had bought her an expensive jade bracelet, hoping to finally bridge the chasm between us. Little did I know that in my apartment was a letter that would shatter everything I thought I knew about my place in our family. By the end of that night, I would discover why my grandmother's love had always felt conditional, and why the truth had been buried for nearly 3 decades. Before I share what happened, let me know where you're watching from, and if you've ever felt like an outsider in your own family, this story might help you understand that sometimes the fault isn't yours to bear. Growing up in San Francisco's Richmond district, our multi-generational household looked like the American dream to outsiders. My grandmother, Mei-Ling Chen, had immigrated from Taiwan in 1965 with nothing but determination and her late husband's modest savings. She built a successful import business from their cramped apartment, eventually purchasing the Victorian house where 3 generations now lived under her watchful authority. Nai Nai, as we called her, ruled our family with the iron discipline of someone who had survived war, poverty, and the crushing responsibility of establishing roots in a foreign country. She valued education, financial security, and above all, family honor. Every decision was filtered through these priorities, every achievement measured against the family's reputation in our tight-knit Chinese-American community. My mother, Linda, was Nai Nai's only child, born after years of fertility struggles that had nearly broken my grandmother's marriage. Mom was the dutiful daughter who had followed every expectation perfectly: excellent grades, marriage to a respectable Chinese-American accountant, David Chen, and the promise of continuing the family lineage. She managed the business side of Nai Nai's import company while raising 2 children, somehow making the juggling act look effortless to outside observers. My older brother Kevin was 31 and undeniably the golden grandchild. He had become a successful software engineer at Google, married his college sweetheart Jennifer, and produced Nai Nai's first great-grandchild, little Emma, who was already being groomed for academic excellence at age 3. Kevin seemed to intuitively understand what would please Nai Nai, effortlessly navigating family expectations while building an impressive career that brought honor to the Chen name. Then there was me. Despite graduating from UCSF Medical School with honors and completing my residency in emergency medicine, I was perpetually the family disappointment. Not because my achievements weren't impressive, but because they never seemed to satisfy Nai Nai's specific vision of success. When I chose emergency medicine over pediatrics, she questioned why I wanted to work with broken people instead of nurturing children. When I bought my own apartment instead of staying in the family home, she saw it as rejection of tradition. When I remained single at 29, focused on my career, she worried aloud about my priorities and the family lineage. The pattern had been consistent throughout my life. Kevin's B+ was met with proud discussions of his improvement, while my A prompted questions about what had gone wrong. His interest in computers was encouraged as practical and lucrative, while my fascination with medicine was initially dismissed as too difficult for girls and later criticized as too demanding for a good wife and mother. Even now, his modest promotion at Google warranted a family dinner celebration, while my chief resident position at San Francisco General earned only a polite nod and immediate questions about when I planned to settle down. What made the disparity particularly painful was its inexplicability. I shared Nai Nai's stubbornness, her analytical mind, her refusal to accept defeat. We were similar in ways that Kevin wasn't, yet this similarity seemed to irritate rather than endear me to her. Sometimes I caught her watching me with an expression I couldn't decipher, something between sadness and resentment that disappeared the moment she realized I was looking. Mom tried to bridge the gap, often serving as translator between Nai Nai's expectations and my reality. "She just wants you to be happy," Mom would explain after particularly tense family dinners. In her generation, happiness came from security, from following proven paths. "She doesn't understand that your path might lead to the same destination." But even Mom's explanations felt hollow when faced with the obvious favoritism shown toward Kevin, the effortless affection that flowed toward him but somehow never quite reached me. The jade bracelet I purchased for Chinese New Year cost 3 weeks of my resident salary, but I convinced myself it would be worth it to see genuine pleasure in Nai Nai's eyes just once. The piece was exquisite, deep green jade with intricate gold settings, the kind of heirloom jewelry she admired in other families. In my fantasy, this gift would finally prove my respect for her values, my understanding of what mattered to her, my worthiness of the unconditional love she seemed to reserve for everyone else. Looking back now, I can see how desperate that gesture was, how it represented decades of accumulated longing for approval from a woman who seemed constitutionally incapable of giving it to me. I wasn't buying jewelry, I was trying to purchase what every grandchild deserves, the knowledge that they are cherished simply for existing. Chinese New Year in the Chin household was an elaborate affair that began weeks before the actual celebration. Nai Nai would start planning in December, coordinating with relatives scattered across California, ordering special ingredients from her preferred suppliers in Chinatown, and beginning the complex preparations that would culminate in a feast designed to impress both family and the community leaders who always received invitations. This year felt particularly loaded with expectation. Kevin and Jennifer had announced at Christmas that they were trying for a second child, news that sent Nai Nai into raptures of joy and prompted weeks of advice about timing, nutrition, and the importance of giving Emma a sibling. My own news, acceptance into a fellowship program that would advance my career significantly, had been received with polite acknowledgement, followed immediately by concerns about how such demanding work would affect my chances of marriage. As the celebration approached, I found myself spiraling into familiar patterns of anxiety. I spent an entire weekend shopping for the perfect outfit, something that balanced professionalism with femininity, modernity with respect for tradition. I settled on a deep red dress that honored the holiday colors while fitting well enough to suggest success without appearing too career-focused. The contradictory requirements felt absurd even as I participated in them, the ritual of a nearly 30-year-old woman still seeking approval from a matriarch who seemed determined to withhold it. The weeks leading up to the celebration were filled with memories of previous New Years, each one marked by some form of disappointment. When I was 16 and won the regional science fair, Nai Nai had questioned why I hadn't also won the state competition. My college graduation summa cum laude was overshadowed by her concerns about medical school debt. My first year of residency, when I was named outstanding intern, led to discussions about how the long hours were already making me look tired and older than my age. But this year carried additional weight because of something I had discovered 3 months earlier while helping Mom organize family documents for tax purposes. Buried in a box of old papers, I had found a letter that made no sense, official correspondence from Catholic Charities addressed to my mother, dated 9 months before my birth, regarding placement procedures and biological parent information. The language was formal and bureaucratic, but the implications were staggering. Initially, I convinced myself there was an innocent explanation. Perhaps Mom had volunteered with adoption services, or the letter had been misfiled among our family documents. But the date kept nagging at me, and eventually I had taken photos of the letter with my phone, unable to bring myself to ask Mom directly but unable to ignore what I had seen. Late-night Google searches had led me down a rabbit hole of information about adoption procedures in the 1990s, domestic placement agencies, and the complex emotions surrounding closed adoptions. The more I learned, the more the letter's existence made a terrible kind of sense. It would explain the inexplicable distance from Nai Nai, the subtle physical differences no one acknowledged, the feeling of being perpetually out of step with family rhythms I couldn't quite grasp. The night before Chinese New Year, I called my best friend Jessica from my apartment, staring at photocopies of the letter I had made but never quite worked up the courage to confront. "You have to ask," Jessica said with the bluntness of someone who had heard too many stories about my family dynamics. "Even if it's not what you think, you deserve to know why you've always felt like an outsider in your own home." I promised I would find the right moment, but the letter remained in my purse like a loaded weapon I both feared and couldn't quite abandon. Part of me hoped that Nai Nai's reaction to the jade bracelet would make the conversation unnecessary, that finally achieving her approval would render the questions irrelevant. Chinese New Year morning arrived with the familiar chaos of our household in celebration mode. The kitchen was a symphony of sizzling woks and steaming bamboo baskets as Mom and our part-time helper Mrs. Wong prepared enough food to feed our extended family and the inevitable last-minute guests Nai would invite. The house had been cleaned to perfection, red decorations hung with mathematical precision, and the dining room table extended to accommodate 18 people. I arrived early, as expected, carrying the carefully wrapped jade bracelet and wearing my chosen red dress. Mom looked exhausted but pleased as she directed the final preparations, her own outfit impeccable despite having been cooking since dawn. "Sarah, perfect timing," she said, giving me a distracted hug. Nai is in the living room greeting early arrivals. "Maybe wait until after Uncle Peter's family gets here to give her your gift? You know how she likes to have everyone's attention for special moments." The suggestion stung slightly. Even the timing of my gift-giving required strategic planning, but I nodded agreement. The living room was already filling with relatives I saw primarily during holidays, the annual gathering of cousins, second cousins, and family friends who comprised our extended clan. Aunt Susan's family had driven down from Sacramento, their 3 perfectly behaved children already clustered around Emma while the adults discussed property values and investment strategies. Nai held court from her favorite armchair, a throne-like piece that positioned her to observe everything while requiring visitors to approach her directly. She looked magnificent in a deep purple silk outfit that highlighted the jade jewelry she wore for special occasions, her white hair perfectly styled, her posture erect despite her 78 years. Her eyes swept the room constantly, cataloging arrivals, noting details, ensuring everything met her exacting standards. When Kevin and Jennifer arrived with Emma, the room's energy shifted noticeably. Nai's face transformed with genuine joy as 3-year-old Emma ran to her great-grandmother's arms, chattering about the new toys she had received for New Year. The sight of Nai's unguarded affection for Emma, the soft Mandarin endearments she whispered, the careful attention to every word from her great-granddaughter, highlighted everything I had never received. "Ah, Kevin," Nai said as her grandson bent to kiss her cheek, "you look healthy. Success agrees with you. And Jennifer, the pregnancy is treating you well? You have that glow already." Jennifer blushed, confirming what the family had suspected, another great-grandchild was indeed on the way. The announcement prompted a round of congratulations and excited planning discussions that consumed the next 20 minutes. When the attention finally turned to me, Nai's greeting was cordial but noticeably cooler. "Sarah, you look tired. The hospital work is too demanding. When will you realize that your health is more important than impressing supervisors who don't care about you personally?" The criticism, delivered as concern, effectively dismissed my career achievements while simultaneously implying that my priorities were fundamentally flawed. I maintained the pleasant expression I had perfected for difficult patients, responding with neutral pleasantries about work being rewarding and my health being fine. But the familiar sting of conditional acceptance burned as I watched her return her attention to Kevin's discussion of his latest project, her face animated with interest and pride. Mom materialized with a cup of jasmine tea, the wordless support of someone who had witnessed these interactions for decades. "She's just worried about you working too hard," Mom murmured, the same explanation I had heard countless times. "You know how she is about family safety and security." But the excuse felt increasingly hollow when contrasted with Nai's enthusiasm for Kevin's equally demanding career. As the afternoon progressed, more relatives arrived, filling the house with the familiar combination of Mandarin, Cantonese, and English that characterized our family gatherings. Conversations flowed between languages depending on the speaker and subject, creating a symphony of voices that was both comforting and overwhelming. Children ran between rooms while adults caught up on the year's developments, business ventures, academic achievements, and family milestones. The formal dinner began at precisely 3 p.m., everyone gathering around the extended dining table that showcased Mom's culinary efforts, whole steamed fish for prosperity, dumplings shaped like gold ingots for wealth, long noodles for longevity, and a dozen other dishes carrying symbolic meaning. Nai had assigned seating with her usual attention to hierarchy and family dynamics, placing herself at the head with Kevin's family to her right and various relatives arranged according to their perceived status within the family structure. I found my designated seat toward the middle of the table, positioned between Cousin Michael's wife Anna and Uncle Peter, safely removed from the inner circle but close enough to participate in general conversation. The placement felt symbolic, acknowledging my family membership while maintaining distance from the central power structure. As dishes were passed and conversations swirled, I found myself observing family dynamics with the clinical detachment I had developed in medical school. The patterns were clear once you learned to look. Nai directing discussion through strategic questions and comments, Mom facilitating smooth interactions, Kevin receiving primary attention as the family's crown prince, and me existing in a peripheral role that was acknowledged but never celebrated. The moment I had been building toward arrived during the traditional gift exchange after dinner. Kevin and Jennifer presented Nai with a beautiful silk scarf and a photo album of Emma's milestones from the past year. Her delight was genuine and effusive, her thanks heartfelt as she immediately wore the scarf and paged through the photographs with obvious pleasure. When my turn came, I approached her chair with the carefully wrapped jade bracelet, my heart pounding with the same nervousness I had felt as a child presenting school projects for approval. Nai, I wanted to give you something special for New Year. I know how much you appreciate fine jade. She opened the box with her characteristic careful attention to detail, her expression shifting to surprise as she recognized the quality of the piece. For a moment, I saw something that might have been pleasure, her fingers tracing the intricate gold work with genuine appreciation. "This is very expensive, Sarah," she said, her tone unreadable. "Too expensive for someone still paying medical school loans." The comment, delivered in front of the entire family, effectively transformed my gesture of respect into evidence of poor financial judgment. Several relatives glanced at me with expressions ranging from sympathy to embarrassment while Nai continued examining the bracelet with professional interest rather than personal gratitude. "It's beautiful craftsmanship," she acknowledged, placing it back in the box. "But you should be saving money for your future, for when you finally find someone to marry and need to contribute to a household. Gifts like this can wait until you have more security." The dismissal was gentle but complete, my weeks of salary reduced to an example of misplaced priorities. I maintained my composure through years of practice, accepting her thanks with a gracious smile while internally processing another rejection. But this time, something felt different. Instead of the familiar despair and self-doubt, I experienced a strange clarity, as if I was finally seeing the pattern from outside rather than being trapped within it. As the evening continued with traditional games and more conversation, I found myself studying Nai's interactions with other family members, noting the subtle but consistent differences in her responses to me versus everyone else. The observation was both validating and painful, confirming what I had sensed my entire life while highlighting how long I had been gaslit into believing the problem was my perception rather than reality. When cousin Lisa mentioned her recent promotion to partner at her law firm, Nai beamed with pride and asked detailed questions about her new responsibilities. When I had mentioned my fellowship acceptance weeks earlier, she had immediately pivoted to concerns about work-life balance. The contrast was impossible to ignore once I allowed myself to see it clearly. Around 8 p.m., as some relatives began making departure preparations, I stepped onto the back porch for fresh air and a moment of emotional recovery. The night was clear and cold, the city lights twinkling beyond our neighborhood, and I found myself thinking about the letter in my purse and the growing certainty that it held answers to questions I had been afraid to ask. Mom found me there 10 minutes later, carrying 2 cups of tea and wearing the expression of someone who had been watching the evening's dynamics with her own form of painful awareness. "Rough night?" she asked gently, settling beside me on the porch swing. "Same as always," I replied, accepting the tea gratefully. I keep thinking things will be different, that some gesture or achievement will finally break through whatever barrier exists between us. But nothing ever does. The admission felt dangerous, acknowledging what we had both observed but never discussed directly. Mom was quiet for a long moment, staring into her tea as if it contained answers to complex questions. "Sarah," she began carefully, "there's something we need to talk about. Something I should have told you years ago, but the timing never felt right, and then so much time passed that it became harder rather than easier." My heart rate accelerated, the letter in my purse suddenly feeling like it was burning against my side. "What kind of something?" I asked, though part of me already knew. "About your birth." "About why?" She stopped, gathering courage for words that had been held back for nearly 3 decades. "About why Nai has always struggled to show you the same affection she shows Kevin. It's not because you don't deserve it, Sarah. It's because of circumstances that had nothing to do with you but affected how she saw you from the beginning." The conversation that followed unfolded like a revelation that was simultaneously shocking and inevitable, explaining everything while changing everything. Mom's words confirmed what the letter had suggested but with details that made the situation far more complex than I had imagined. I was adopted, but not in the way most people understood adoption. Mom and Dad had been married for 5 years and struggling with infertility when Mom's younger sister Lisa, living in Portland, found herself pregnant at 19 with no support system and no way to raise a child. In 1994, unmarried pregnancy still carried significant stigma in conservative Chinese families, and Lisa had begged Mom to take the baby rather than face family shame or surrender to strangers. "We wanted you so desperately," Mom explained, tears flowing freely as she revealed the secret that had shaped my entire existence. "Dad and I had been trying for years, going through treatments, facing disappointment after disappointment. When Lisa called, it felt like a miracle. But Nai." She paused, choosing words carefully. Nai was furious. Not about helping Lisa, but about the deception it would require. She believed strongly that family bloodlines mattered, that carrying on the family name meant biological continuation. "When we decided to raise you as our own without telling the extended family or the community about the adoption, she agreed to keep the secret but never fully accepted the arrangement." The explanation continued for 2 hours, Mom revealing details that recontextualized every interaction I had ever had with Nai. My biological Aunt Lisa had moved to Oregon and started a new life, eventually marrying and having 2 more children who were technically my half-siblings. She had stayed in minimal contact with Mom through the years, sending occasional updates but never requesting direct contact with me per their original agreement. Nai had tried to love me as her granddaughter, Mom insisted, but the knowledge that I wasn't biologically connected to the Chin family line had colored every interaction. In her traditional worldview, adoption was charity rather than true family creation, and while she respected the kindness of taking me in, she couldn't extend the same instinctive protectiveness and pride she felt toward Kevin, her biological grandson. "She's not a bad person," Mom said, defending the woman who had made my childhood a series of conditional acceptances. "She's just limited by her generation's beliefs about family and bloodlines. In her mind, you were always Lisa's daughter being raised by us rather than truly our daughter." The distinction mattered to her in ways I hoped time would change, but it never did. The conversation concluded with apologies that felt both necessary and insufficient, explanations that clarified while highlighting decades of unnecessary pain. Mom begged me not to confront Nai directly, worried that public revelation would destroy family harmony and hurt a woman who was, despite her limitations, genuinely caring within her understanding of the world. I promised to consider her request, but the weight of the truth was overwhelming. The jade bracelet, the fellowship achievement, the years of attempting to earn approval from someone who was constitutionally incapable of giving it to me, it all suddenly made terrible sense. I wasn't failing to meet Nai's standards. I was fighting a battle that had been lost before my first breath, struggling against a prejudice that had nothing to do with my actions and everything to do with circumstances beyond my control. The ride home to my apartment was a blur of processing and planning. The truth explained everything but solved nothing. Nai would continue treating me as a perpetual outsider because, in her mind, that's exactly what I was. The family dynamic that had shaped my entire identity was built on a foundation of deception that served everyone's comfort except mine. Over the following weeks, I found myself researching my biological family with the same methodical approach I brought to medical diagnoses. Lisa Chen, now Lisa Morrison, lived in Portland with her husband and 2 teenage daughters. Her LinkedIn profile showed a successful career in marketing, her Facebook page evidence of a normal, happy family life that included no references to the daughter she had given up nearly 30 years earlier. The knowledge that I had half-sisters, that there was a biological family who might welcome me without the complicated dynamics of the Chen household, was both exciting and terrifying. Part of me wanted to reach out immediately, to connect with people who shared my DNA and might understand aspects of my personality that had always felt foreign in Nai's house. But another part feared another rejection, another family dynamic where I didn't quite fit. Jessica encouraged me to make contact, arguing that I deserved to know my complete history and that Lisa might be equally curious about the daughter she had placed with family. "You've spent your whole life trying to fit into one family's expectations," she pointed out during one of our long discussions. "Maybe it's time to explore connections that don't require you to constantly prove your worth." 3 months after Chinese New Year, I sent a carefully crafted email to Lisa through her work address, explaining who I was and expressing interest in connecting if she was comfortable with contact. The response came within 24 hours, surprise, joy, and an immediate invitation to visit Portland when I had time off from the hospital. The reunion was everything I had hoped for and nothing like I had expected. Lisa was recognizably family, we shared the same laugh, the same way of processing information, the same stubborn streak that I had always thought came from Nai but apparently originated from a completely different genetic line. Her daughters, Emma and Sophie, were warm and curious, immediately accepting me as their half-sister with the adaptability of teenagers who had grown up understanding that families came in many configurations. "I thought about you every day for the first 5 years," Lisa confessed over dinner our first evening together. "I wondered if Linda and David were telling you about me, if you were happy, if you had questions I should be answering. But Linda asked me to step back completely to avoid confusing you, and I thought that was probably the right choice at the time." She had followed my progress from afar through Linda's occasional updates, knew about medical school and my residency, felt proud of achievements she couldn't openly celebrate. "When I heard you were becoming a doctor, I cried for an hour," she admitted. "Not because I was sad, but because I was so proud and had no way to tell you that." The validation of having a biological parent express unconditional pride in my achievements, without qualification or comparison, was healing in ways I hadn't anticipated. Lisa saw my career as proof of character and intelligence rather than evidence of misplaced priorities. She understood my drive and ambition as family traits rather than character flaws requiring correction. Over several visits to Portland and ongoing phone conversations, I developed a relationship with Lisa's family that felt natural in ways my interactions with the Chens never had. Emma and Sophie treated me like the big sister they had always wanted, seeking advice about college applications and career choices. Lisa's husband Mark welcomed me as family without the complicated history that colored every interaction in San Francisco. Meanwhile, my relationship with the Chen family evolved into something more honest but more distant. I continued attending major gatherings but stopped seeking Nai's approval, stopped interpreting her criticism as guidance requiring incorporation. The change in my behavior was subtle but noticeable, and it created space for more authentic interactions with the family members who had always supported me. Kevin, surprisingly, initiated a conversation about family dynamics several months after I had begun pulling back emotionally. "You've seemed different lately," he observed during a rare one-on-one coffee meeting. "More confident, but also more distant from the family stuff. Is everything okay?" His genuine concern prompted the first honest conversation we had ever had about our different treatment within the family. Kevin acknowledged that he had always been aware of the disparity but had assumed it reflected Nai's higher expectations for me rather than fundamental favoritism. When I shared the truth about my adoption, his response was immediate anger on my behalf. "That's incredibly unfair," he said, his protective older brother instincts finally emerging. "You've spent your whole life trying to earn something that was never actually available. I'm furious that Mom and Dad let this continue for so long without addressing it directly. His validation helped heal wounds I didn't realize were still bleeding. Having the golden child acknowledge the system that had benefited him while hurting me provided closure I hadn't known I needed. Kevin's response also highlighted how the family's conspiracy of silence had prevented natural sibling bonding, robbing us both of deeper connection through shared understanding. Mom struggled more with my emotional withdrawal from family expectations. She had spent years managing the tensions between Nai's limitations and my needs, believing that her mediation was protecting everyone involved. My newfound independence from Nai's approval disrupted the careful balance she had maintained, forcing her to confront the costs of secrets she had thought were protecting the family. I was trying to give you the best life possible, she explained during one of our difficult conversations about the past. Taking you in was the most natural thing in the world, you were family from the moment Lisa called. But I didn't know how to handle Nai's resistance, and I thought time would soften her position. I didn't realize how much her attitude was hurting you because you never complained directly. The conversation was painful but necessary, helping us establish a more honest relationship based on acknowledgement of past mistakes rather than continued pretense that everything had been fine. Mom began making more effort to counter Nai's subtle criticisms, to highlight my achievements in family conversations, to create space for me to exist in the family without constantly defending my choices. Nai herself seemed bewildered by my changed behavior but never directly addressed it. The jade bracelet remained in her jewelry box, occasionally worn to community events where its quality reflected well on the family's prosperity. She continued offering criticism disguised as concern, but my responses became more politely non-committal, refusing to engage with the emotional manipulation that had once devastated me. A year after discovering the truth about my adoption, I made the decision to share the story publicly during Kevin's wedding toast. Not to hurt anyone, but to acknowledge the journey that had brought me to a place of genuine self-acceptance and authentic family connection. The revelation surprised many relatives but also explained dynamics they had observed for years without understanding. Family isn't just about genetics, I said, raising my glass to Kevin and Jennifer. It's about who shows up, who supports your dreams, who loves you through your mistakes and celebrates your victories. I'm grateful to have discovered that true family can be both the people who raised you and the people you choose to build relationships with based on mutual respect and affection. The speech was well received by most attendees, though Nai left early and didn't speak to me for several months afterward. The temporary estrangement was painful but also liberating, confirming that her love had always been conditional and freeing me from the exhausting effort of earning approval that was never truly available. Today, 2 years after that life-changing Chinese New Year, my relationships with all family members are more honest if not necessarily closer. I maintain respectful but limited contact with Nai, no longer seeking her validation but not actively avoiding family gatherings where she's present. Kevin and I have developed a genuine sibling relationship based on mutual support rather than competition for parental attention. Mom and I continue working through the complex emotions surrounding adoption secrecy, slowly building trust damaged by decades of well-intentioned deception. Most importantly, I've built chosen family connections that nourish rather than deplete me. Lisa and I talk weekly, sharing professional challenges and personal victories with someone who understands my perspective intuitively. Her daughters have become the sisters I always wanted, relationships uncomplicated by competitive family dynamics or conditional approval systems. My career has flourished since I stopped seeking validation from people incapable of providing it. The fellowship I accepted has led to opportunities one never could have imagined, and my work in emergency medicine feels like authentic calling rather than desperate attempt to prove worthiness. The energy previously exhausted on seeking approval has been redirected toward meaningful professional relationships and personal growth. Perhaps the most significant change has been in my understanding of self-worth. The realization that Nai's treatment of me reflected her limitations rather than my inadequacies was revolutionary, freeing me from a lifetime of self-doubt and compulsive achieving. I no longer measure success by other people's reactions but by internal satisfaction and alignment with my values. The jade bracelet I bought as desperate offering to an unwinnable relationship sits in my jewelry box now, reclaimed after Nai returned it during one of her angry periods. I wear it occasionally, not as a reminder of rejection but as symbol of how far I've traveled from seeking external validation to building internal worth. The expensive gesture that once represented desperate need for approval now reminds me that I am worthy of beautiful things simply because I choose to honor myself. Sometimes people ask if I regret learning the truth about my adoption, if ignorance might have been easier than knowledge. The answer is always no. Understanding the source of lifelong emotional confusion allowed me to stop blaming myself for dynamics beyond my control and start building relationships based on genuine connection rather than obligation or hope for eventual acceptance. The family photo from that last Chinese New Year sits on my desk at the hospital, a reminder of the journey from desperate seeking to peaceful acceptance. In the picture, I'm smiling with the same professional composure I had perfected for difficult situations, unaware that within hours I would finally understand why that composure had been necessary for survival in my own family. Looking at that photo now, I see a woman on the verge of tremendous growth, still trapped by expectations that were never fair but about to break free into authentic relationships that honor her complete self. The journey from that moment to this one hasn't been easy, but it has been worth every difficult conversation, every moment of uncertainty, every choice to prioritize truth over comfortable fiction. Have you ever discovered that the love you were seeking was conditional in ways you never understood? Sometimes the people who should cherish us unconditionally are limited by beliefs and fears that have nothing to do with our worth. I'd love to read your thoughts in the comments about how you've built chosen family or learned to separate your value from other people's capacity to recognize it. If my story resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe for more stories about finding authentic connection, and share with someone who might need to hear that their worth doesn't depend on fitting into someone else's vision of who they should be. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop trying to earn what should be freely given and start building relationships with people who see your value clearly from the beginning.